2 words from grieving parents stopped Family Feud history cold. But it wasn't just what they said that shattered Steve Harvey. It was why their 18-year-old daughter wasn't standing with them, and the secret she'd been hiding that would change everything about how we see teenage struggles. This is the story that transformed America's favorite game show host from entertainer to advocate and turned one family's heartbreak into a movement that would save countless lives. Picture this. The bright lights of the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. Tuesday morning, October 15th, Steve Harvey walks onto the set with his trademark confidence, his perfectly tailored suit catching the studio lights. But today, something feels different. There's an energy in the air that even the most experienced television host couldn't have prepared for. The Johnson family from Sacramento stands at their podium, but there's an obvious gap in their lineup. 5 family members instead of 6. An empty space that seems to grow larger every time the camera focuses on them. Steve notices immediately after hosting thousands of episodes. He's developed an instinct for reading fates, and the Johnsons are carrying something heavy. "Where's your daughter Emma?" Steve asks during introductions, his voice warm but curious. "I see here on my card we were expecting 6 family members." The parents exchange a look that lasts just a second too long. Mrs. Johnson, an elementary school teacher in her mid-40s, clears her throat. "She couldn't make it," she says quietly. But her husband David's jaw is clenched, his hands gripping the podium edge so tightly his knuckles have gone white. Something in their eyes tells a completely different story. Steve Harvey has hosted over 3,000 episodes of Family Feud. He can read micro-expressions like a detective reads clues. The way Mrs. Johnson's voice catches on the word couldn't. The way Mr. Johnson looks down when she speaks. The way their other children, 20-year-old Marcus, 22-year-old Sarah, and 25-year-old Jessica, seem to close ranks protectively around their parents. This isn't just disappointment about a missed opportunity. This is grief. But the show must go on. That's television. That's professionalism. That's what Steve Harvey has done for decades. Kept the energy high, the laughs coming, the families feeling special. So he files away his observations and introduces the competing Rodriguez family from Phoenix with his usual enthusiasm. The game starts normally enough. Steve works the crowd with his signature blend of humor and warmth. Survey says echoes through the studio as families buzz in with their answers. The Johnsons manage to smile, even laugh at Steve's jokes. But that empty space at their podium seems to cast a shadow over everything. During the first round, when asked to name something teenagers spend too much time doing, young Marcus Johnson buzzes in with social media. It's the #1 answer on the board, and the family celebrates. But Steve notices Mrs. Johnson doesn't smile. Instead, she looks like someone just punched her in the stomach. The second round brings the question that changes everything. Name something parents worry about most with their teenagers. Mrs. Johnson buzzes in quickly, almost desperately. "Their safety," she answers, her voice breaking slightly on the word safety. It's the #3 answer, worth 18 points. The family should be celebrating their opportunity to play the round. Instead, Mrs. Johnson starts crying. Not the happy tears of excitement you might expect from someone on their favorite game show. These are different. These are the tears of someone carrying something too heavy for their shoulders. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs that seem to come from somewhere beyond television cameras and studio lights. The audience assumes it's just overwhelming emotions, being on TV, the pressure of the game, the excitement. But Steve Harvey knows better. He's seen every kind of tear a game show can produce. These aren't those tears. Steve's comedian instincts kick in first. He walks over to the family podium with his easy smile, ready to comfort what he assumes might be a case of stage fright or overwhelming emotions. "Mrs. Johnson, you okay, sweetheart? This is pretty exciting, huh?" Sometimes the emotions just hit you when you're living your dream. But when Mrs. Johnson looks up at him, Steve sees something in her eyes that stops him cold. It's not excitement. It's not stage fright. It's pain. Raw, adult pain that cuts deeper than any game show pressure ever could. The kind of pain that comes from loss, real loss. "Steve," Mrs. Johnson whispers, her voice so quiet the studio microphones barely pick it up. "Can we tell you something about Emma?" The studio audience is still buzzing with energy from the previous answer, unaware of the intimate moment unfolding on stage. Steve glances at the producers in the booth, then back at the Johnson family. Every instinct tells him to keep the show moving, to handle this during the commercial break, to maintain the energy and pace that makes good television. Instead, he makes a choice that will define not just that episode, but his entire understanding of what families really go through behind closed doors. Steve Harvey sets down his cards right there on the studio floor. The same cards he's held for thousands of tapings. The cards that represent the fun, the competition, the entertainment value of Family Feud. Today, they're not important. "Stop the music," he calls out to the production booth, his voice carrying across the studio with an authority that silences everyone immediately. "Stop everything." The theme music cuts out mid-note. The audience falls silent, sensing something unprecedented is happening. Even the camera operators seem to understand that this is no longer about television ratings or entertainment value. This is about human connection. Mr. Johnson steps forward, his voice shaking with emotion. "Steve, we need to tell you about our daughter. About Emma." The words hang in the air like a prayer. Steve nods slowly, giving them permission to continue. Behind the scenes, producers are frantically trying to figure out what's happening, but Steve waves them off. This moment belongs to the Johnson family. What happens next breaks every rule Family Feud has ever established. Mrs. Johnson looks directly into the camera, speaking not to Steve or the studio audience, but to the millions of families watching at home. "Our daughter Emma, she's not here because she can't be here. 3 months ago, Her voice cracks, but she forces herself to continue. "She took her own life." The words hit the studio like a physical force. The audience gasps audibly. Several people in the front row bring their hands to their mouths. The Rodriguez family, who had been cheering and laughing moments before, moves closer to the Johnson podium instinctively, offering silent support. Steve Harvey, the man who built a career on quick wit and perfect timing, stands completely speechless. The silence stretches for what feels like an eternity, but is probably only seconds. In that silence, everyone in the studio, audience members, crew, producers, contestants, understands they're witnessing something far more important than a game show. They're witnessing a family's courage to speak truth in the hopes of preventing another family's tragedy. But Mrs. Johnson isn't finished. The floodgates have opened, and weeks of carefully controlled grief come pouring out. "Emma was being cyberbullied at school," she continues, her voice gaining strength as she speaks. "Kids created fake social media accounts in her name. They shared private photos she'd sent to someone she trusted. They spread rumors about her, made memes mocking her appearance, her personality, her dreams. It went on for months." Mr. Johnson's voice is barely audible as he adds, "She tried to tell us. She came to us crying, showing us the posts, the messages, the comments. But his voice breaks completely. "We thought it was just normal teenage drama. We told her to ignore it, that kids could be cruel, but it would pass. We told her to just stay off social media for a while." The camera operators continue filming, but by now, everyone in the studio understands they're witnessing something far beyond television. This is a family sharing their deepest pain, their greatest regret, in the hopes that other families might recognize the signs they missed. Steve Harvey has faced every possible situation a game show can throw at him. Contestants who fainted, families who fought, answers so inappropriate they couldn't be aired. But this is completely uncharted territory. This is raw human pain, broadcast to millions, with no script to follow and no precedent to guide him. He walks slowly to the Johnson family podium, his usual confident stride replaced by the careful steps of someone approaching sacred ground. "How long has it been?" he asks softly, his voice stripped of all performance, all entertainment value. This is just Steve Harvey, the man talking to parents who have lost their child. 87 days. Mrs. Johnson whispers, "We've counted every single one." The specificity of that number, not 3 months, not roughly 12 weeks, but 87 exact days, hits everyone in the studio like a gut punch. This is how grief works. This is how parents, measure time when their child is gone. Day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. What Steve Harvey does next has never been done in game show history. It defies every protocol, every producer expectation, every rule about maintaining entertainment value and keeping shows on schedule. He turns to face the entire studio audience and speaks with a gravity that transcends entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop this game right now. Not pause it, not take a commercial break. Stop it completely. Because this family just taught us something more important than any points on a board, any bet we could win, any prize we could give away. The audience is completely silent now. You can hear the air conditioning humming, the cameras whirring, the sound of 200 people holding their breath. They just taught us that when our kids are hurting, when they're being bullied, when they're struggling with something that feels bigger than they can handle, we listen. We don't dismiss it as drama. We don't tell them to just ignore it. We don't wait for it to pass. We listen, and we act, and we get them help. The Rodriguez family patriarch, a man in his 60s who had driven 12 hours from Phoenix to be on the show, steps forward without hesitation. Steve, whatever this family needs, whatever we can do to help them, we're here. The game doesn't matter. But it's what happens next that no one in the studio, not the producers, not the audience, not even Steve himself, sees coming. Steve Harvey walks back to Mrs. Johnson and does something that no game show host in television history has ever done. He removes his suit jacket, the same perfectly tailored jacket he's worn for every single taping, the one that had become part of his television persona, the one that represents his success and professionalism, and he gently wraps it around Mrs. Johnson's shoulders. The gesture is so unexpected, so human, so completely outside the bounds of television protocol that several audience members start crying openly. This isn't about the show anymore. This isn't about entertainment or ratings or any of the things that usually drive television production. This is about one human being recognizing another's pain and responding with pure compassion. "This is for Emma," Steve says, his voice now clearly audible throughout the silent studio, but thick with emotion. "I want you to keep this jacket, and I want you to know something. Emma's story matters. Her struggle was real. Her pain was valid. And what you're doing right now, sharing her story, honoring her memory, trying to help other families, this is how we make sure she didn't suffer in vain." Mrs. Johnson clutches the jacket, which is far too large for her small frame, and for the first time since she started speaking, she smiles. Not the polite smile of someone on television, but the grateful smile of a mother whose child's memory is being honored by someone who didn't have to care, but chose to anyway. But Steve isn't finished. He turns to address the cameras directly, speaking not to his usual audience of game show fans, but to parents, teenagers, families across America who might be struggling with similar situations. If you're watching this and you're being bullied online or in person, if you're hurting, if you feel like the whole world is against you, if you think no one understands what you're going through, I need you to hear this. You are not alone. Your pain is real. Your struggle matters. And there are people who will listen, who will help, who will fight for you. He pulls out his phone right there on stage, something that would normally be considered unprofessional, potentially damaging to the carefully controlled environment of television production. "I'm giving the Johnson family my personal number, not my agent's number, not my publicist's number, not some generic studio contact, my personal phone number, because sometimes people need to know that someone successful, someone with a platform, someone with resources, cares enough to answer when they call." The camera operators are still filming, but everyone understands this footage will never be aired in its entirety. This is too raw, too real, too important to be edited down to television-friendly segments. This is documentary-level human truth happening in real time. Mr. Johnson speaks up for the first time since the revelation, his voice stronger now that the secret is finally out. "We found Emma's journals after we lost her. Page after page of her writing about feeling trapped, about not wanting to burden us with her problems, about thinking the bullying would never stop. She wrote that she felt like even her own parents didn't believe how bad it was getting." Steve nods, understanding something that goes beyond Emma's specific situation. That's what we do as adults sometimes. We minimize what kids are going through. because we survived our own teenage years. But the world our kids are growing up in, with social media, with cyberbullying, with 24/7 connection to cruelty, it's different from what we experienced. The pain is amplified. The escape routes are fewer. The permanent consequences feel more real. What happens next transforms the entire studio dynamic. Steve makes an announcement that defies every game show tradition, every producer expectation, every rule about how television works. Here's what we're going to do. The Johnson family and the Rodriguez family are both going to win today. We're throwing out the game, throwing out the rules, and we're declaring both families winners. But more than that, every penny of prize money that would have been awarded today, every dollar from both families, it's going to go towards cyberbullying prevention and teenage mental health resources. The Rodriguez family doesn't hesitate. Their entire family moves across the stage to surround the Johnsons, offering hugs, sharing tears, proving that humanity can show up even in the most unexpected places. Steve continues, and we're not stopping there. My foundation is partnering with Emma's Memory to create programs in schools across the country. Real programs with real resources that teach kids how to recognize cyberbullying, how to report it, how to support friends who are struggling, and how to get help when they need it. But the most powerful moment comes when Steve kneels down. This successful, wealthy, famous man kneeling on a game show stage and speaks directly to Mrs. Johnson at eye level. Emma was 18 years old. She had dreams, plans, a whole life ahead of her. The kids who bullied her, they probably thought it was just fun, just jokes, just something that wouldn't really hurt anyone. But words have power. Online cruelty has consequences. And Emma's story, your family's courage in sharing it, might be exactly what saves another child's life. The episode that eventually aired 3 months later became the most watched Family Feud episode in the show's history. But the ratings were secondary to what really mattered, the conversations it started in homes across America. The Johnson family received over 50,000 letters and emails in the weeks following the broadcast. Teenagers sharing their own bullying experiences, parents admitting they hadn't taken their children's struggles seriously enough, teachers and school administrators asking for resources to better protect their students. But perhaps the most powerful response came from a high school in Oregon, where students organized an assembly after watching the episode. They created an anonymous reporting system for cyberbullying, established peer support groups, and invited the Johnson family to speak about Emma's story. In the 6 months following that assembly, the school reported a 70% decrease in cyberbullying incidents and a significant increase in students seeking help for mental health struggles. The Johnson family used their platform to create the Emma Johnson Foundation, dedicated to cyberbullying prevention and teenage mental health awareness. Steve Harvey's foundation became their primary partner, funding programs that have now reached over 200,000 students across the United States. The suit jacket Steve gave to Mrs. Johnson that day now hangs in the foundation's office. But its real power isn't symbolic, it's practical. It represents the moment when television stopped being about entertainment and started being about transformation, when a game show became a platform for healing, when a family's loss became a catalyst for protecting other families. 6 months after the episode aired, Steve received a letter that he's kept in his wallet ever since. It was from a 16-year-old girl in Ohio who wrote, "I was planning to end my life the night your episode with Emma's family aired. I had everything planned out, but when I heard her parents talk about missing the signs, when I saw you take them seriously, when I realized that maybe someone would actually listen to me too, I decided to tell my parents everything instead. I showed them the messages, the posts, all of it. We went to the police, we contacted the school, and I started seeing a counselor. I'm still here because Emma's story made my parents understand that my pain was real. Emma saved my life." Steve Harvey has said in numerous interviews since that episode that it fundamentally changed how he approaches his role as a television host. "I realized that day that my job isn't to run a game show," he's explained. "My job is to create moments where people can be their best selves, where families can heal, where stories that need to be told can find their voice." The producers kept every second of that episode's raw footage. While the aired version was edited for television, the complete recording has been used in training programs for teachers, counselors, and law enforcement officers who work with cyberbullying cases. Mental health professionals have called it one of the most powerful examples of public grief turned into positive action they've ever witnessed. Emma Johnson would have turned 19 this past spring. Her parents still visit her grave every Sunday, but they also spend their weeks traveling the country, speaking at schools, training educators, and meeting with families who are struggling with similar situations. They've prevented at least 12 documented suicide attempts through their direct intervention, and countless more through the awareness their story has created. Steve Harvey still keeps an extra handkerchief in his jacket pocket, not for comedic effect, but because he's learned that sometimes people need someone to help wipe away their tears. He's also learned that the most important moments in television happen not when you follow the script, but when you throw it away and follow your heart. The empty space at the Johnson family podium that Tuesday morning in Atlanta represented loss, grief, and missed opportunities. But what filled that space, courage, truth-telling, and a commitment to protecting other children, has resonated far beyond any game show victory ever could. Because that's what love looks like when it's wrapped in loss. That's what courage sounds like when it's spoken through tears. And that's what happens when a family's greatest tragedy becomes their most important gift to the world, the chance to save other families from walking the same heartbreaking path. The Johnsons didn't come to Family Feud to win money or prizes. They came to honor their daughter's memory and to make sure no other family has to count days the way they do. They succeeded beyond any measure a game show could provide. They turned their pain into purpose, their loss into legacy, and their daughter's story into a lifeline for countless other teenagers who needed to know that their struggles are real, their pain matters, and help is available. Emma Johnson's secret wasn't just about the cyberbullying she endured. It was about the shame she felt in not being able to handle it alone, the fear that telling adults would make things worse, and the belief that no one would truly understand how much it hurt. Her parents' courage in sharing that secret publicly created a permission structure for other families to have conversations they'd been avoiding, to take their children's digital struggles seriously, and to seek help before it's too late. Today, the Emma Johnson Foundation operates in 37 states. Steve Harvey personally funds a scholarship program that sends at-risk teenagers to summer camps focused on building resilience and peer support networks. And every year on the anniversary of that October episode, both Steve and the Johnson family receive messages from families whose children are still alive because of Emma's story. Sometimes the most powerful secrets are the ones we find the courage to share. Sometimes the greatest victories happen when we stop playing games and start playing for keeps. And sometimes it takes a family's willingness to share their deepest pain to remind us all what really matters in this life. Protecting our children, listening to their struggles, and never underestimating the power of simply believing them when they tell us they're hurting.